I'm not certifying the transaction. I have no idea about the transaction. Kiyam Shtaris is there just simply to certify the signatures on the document itself. But it has nothing, it's so fascinating. So fascinating. So you could have a situation of Kiyam Shtaris, which makes sense, I would say, because otherwise, Kiyam Shtaris requires a whole certification of the transaction. Then what's the point of the shtar? Then what does the shtar do? The shtar, right, the this on the shtar locks in the transaction. Kiyam shtar certifies the signature. So this is incredible. So we'll say in a case where Reuben was a dying for Kiyam shtar. So now let's play this out. Right? So Levi sells a field to Shimon, and then what happens? They draw up a document, and now they want to bring the document to Beis Din for certification. Reuben is one of the dayanim on the Beis Din to certify. Right? Reuben's Beis Din certifies the document, and then after it's certified, Reuben says to Shimon, by the way, the field is stolen from me. Everyone agrees in that case, Reuben has a valid claim. When we say Reuben has a valid claim, obviously saying something was stolen from you is not a claim. Right? I mean, it's a claim. What it means is Reuben now has the right to what? Pursue that claim. Right? So again, why? And everyone agrees in that case. Everyone agrees in that case. Why? Because Reuben's acting as a guy for Kiyam Shtaros has nothing to do with the transaction. All Reuben was doing was just saying, oh yeah, the signatures, we can say, we can speak, you guys recognize the signatures, fantastic. Go, sign it up, right? And then we're done. Certified, we're done. So everyone agrees in that case that in no way erodes his claim to go ahead and pursue the stolen, right? The stolen, right? The claim that the land was stolen from him. Now Sha'in came, when he's a witness to the actual transaction, sale from Levi to Shimon. In that case, again, part of signing on a shtar is what? You are claiming the transaction itself is valid. When you say you claim the transaction is valid, you can't go ahead and now claim that same parcel was stolen from you. Admon says, yes, I can. The transaction was valid. In other words, yes, Levi sold to Shimon. But at the end of the day, it's my land. Good. So says the Gemara. But I saw a similar act. I was supposed to say the next case in the Mishnah was, that I remember again. Right? So same case, but let's say, not same case. In this case, Shimon the purchaser, Shimon the purchase contested property, we call it parcel A. Shimon is selling parcel B and uses parcel A to identify the borders of parcel B. Reuben himself signs on that shtar as well, or not as well, but Reuben sells on that shtar. The Mishnah says everyone agrees that after he sells on that shtar, he no longer has the right to pursue any claims that the land is stolen. The parcel is stolen. Rabbi, lo shara ala la'acha. That's only true ultimately. Like Rashi said, lo shara la'acha. דווקא לא רק מכניס סימן לאח, אבל עשה המוחזק בה סימן לעצמו של רובן זה האור על עצמו. Listen to this. That's only true when what? When Shimon is selling the parcel to someone else. What happens if Shimon is selling the parcel to Reuben himself? Shimon is selling parcel B to Reuben. And now it happens to be in that sale, Shimon uses parcel A, which is the contested property, as a border identification. But ultimately, in that case, even though Reuben, right, even as Reuben did not go ahead and lose out on his ability to reclaim parcel A. Why? The Amar, Idla Avdilay, because he would say, I would not agree to this. The Havamaz can lay me here. And ultimately, again, Shimon did not sell me the property. In other words, I will say, the concern over here is that if Shimon knows that Reuben is going to be claiming parcel A, he's going to be reticent to what? Selling parcel B. So Reuben wants to buy parcel B. If I lodge my complaint now, then I'm not going to get parcel B. And certainly, again, leaving aside parcel A. So the Gemara says, "Might you not tell him?" So what could Reuben have done? He probably so maybe what Reuben could have done is what before he purchases parcel B from Shimon. Put aside the list. So that's all you guys know. I'm purchasing parcel B from Shimon. In the transaction, Shimon is saying that parcel B like borders on Shimon's other parcel, parcel A. Right? I'm just going to tell you, Ruben's doing like a sidebar. I'll tell you guys, you might also still saying anything else, he's going to act on this transaction. Maybe that's what you should say. Make him a raw, like let him go. He says, yeah, that'll work really well. Chavra is like the Chavra is like. This is your friend has a friend, and the friend of your friend has a friend. Which I will say is another way of saying, don't rely on anyone's confidentiality. Right? So the nice again, if Ruben says something so that people can confidence, the witnesses, they're going to say something, and what's going to happen? It's going to cause the whole transaction. Partially performs properly. Good. You guys are just scholars. So Kavod is like who does similar after. So what says now this case. In this case, so the case over here is so let's go back. So what's that? So this is just a unique case over here. So remember, let's go back. The Mishnah said that in a case where Ruben is now signs on a shtar, right? He's a witness to a document where Shimon is selling parcel B to another party, but in parcel B, he's using parcel A, the contested parcel, as one of the borders. And Ruben signs on that document. Ruben gives up his right to further to any more claim parcel A. That's only true. That now Abai gives a qualification. That's true if Shimon was selling it to another party. But if Shimon was selling it to Ruben himself, so Ruben doesn't object to the use of parcel A as a border, that's because Ruben doesn't want to cause the jeopardy the whole transaction. Fine. So I go back to the original case. Big guy says from the up. So let's go back to the original case. Right, so the original case. So Allah Ta'ala say now, that Ruben is engaged on the shtar, but Shimon is selling parcel B, using parcel A as his border. So what happens? Here are the shepherds. So after the transaction happens, now what happens? So Ruben claims, by the way, parcel A is mine. Parcel A is mine. But what happens? Shuts it. Then he dies. Ruben dies. Okay, so Ruben dies. This is the reason, right? Ruben died after using the objection to the ownership of parcel A. Okay. What happens? The opening of the trust. Let's say, so now again, so after Ruben passed away, right, even Ruben made provisions for this beforehand, or the dating plaintiffs, and now the Tropus, now there's an executor of Ruben's estate. Okay, so Asaf the Tropus coming to Abayes, the Apotropos came before Abayes, Amarei, saw similar, so this is now what happens. The Apotropos is coming, and why is he coming? The Apotropos is saying, listen, before Ruben died, Ruben claimed that he has A belonged to him. So the Apotropos says, I am coming to follow up on that claim. Coming to follow up on that claim. Okay, so Abai is listen. Abai is a good thing. He thinks, listen, Mishnah. Amalei Asar similar Akar, even as a Kusar. We already learned this case. Ruben signed onto this document where Shimon used field A as a border identification for field B. And the Mishnah says, once you do that, you go out and you relinquish all of your rights. Nothing more to talk about. To which the Apotropos says, you're right. But Amar Ihava Avasam Yasmikayim Avatayim Ba'amar Alam Acharasis. Very interesting. So let's say, so the Apotropos says, Ruben is still alive, but Ruben would say yes. I agree. I signed a document where Ruben used field A as the border for field B. The only thing I was agreeing to was that perhaps Shimon owns a narrow strip of field A. A narrow strip of field A. That's what he owns. Anyway, Shabir Muhammad, so that's a disclaimer. One of your friends, Haba Aman Kayat Akala Sisi Lasa, Ne'amal. So it's actually very interesting. That the claim over here is that halacha l'maisa, right? That is, if I go ahead, Rabbi Rothschild says, let's say I sold you a field, right? The field is mine, and the only thing I sold you in that field was a narrow strip. Such a claim could actually be believed. So the Gemara said, see what's happening over here? In other words, Reuben signed on this document that where Shimon was selling the field to other parties, Shimon was selling field B, and field B was sold with a border identification of field A. Reuben signed on it. After Reuben signed on it, the transaction happened. Reuben said, by the way, field A is mine. It was stolen from me by Levi. After that, Reuben dies. Apotropos comes along and says, tries to sell it up to the bears of the state, and comes about it. And the Apotropos, listen, Reuben claimed the stolen field was his. Abai says that's fine, so they was his. Ben says that's fine, but it's a Mishnah. Right? Reuben signed on that document. Signed on that document, using field A as a border for field B, the applicant owns the field. To which the Apotropos says, no, that's what he was here. We're paying all Shimon really owned in that field is just a narrow strip. That's what he was identifying as the ball. Which Abai says that's a designer. But ultimately again, you still should have to go ahead. So in other words, now Abai says the Apotropos, even if that's a good claim, that's fine, but you still have to leave in Shimon's possession a narrow strip. I'll be honest, with what the details. So listen, here's the problem. On that narrow strip, there was a line of countries, which made that narrow border strip pretty valuable. So the Gemara says. So I'm gonna you have this is great. Yeah, Rabbi says Reuben was alive. He could claim why it's true that I sold that border strip back to Shimon. I then subsequently repurchased it. Abai says he's up only shot the problem, saying good. Then Rabbi Yochanan in time so let's say ultimately again we're going to sold it, we're going to repurchase it if you believe. But let's say the reason that it was reasonable is because this is Rashi says Pesha Asar wa Pesha Hitya. The king said there's this look at Rashi Naaman. Here's the case, just to get this mentality. Naaman, the Pesha Asar Pesha Hitya, the Me'akashi Shaisa Shalom. So I will say the key over here is where remember, Shimon sold the field, sorry, Levi sold the field to Shimon. Reuben, and then again, it gets more complicated. Now what happens? So now you have Reuben, sorry. Then you have Shimon, here we go. You have right Levi selling the field to Shimon, field A. Okay, fine. Now what happens? Shimon sells field B to another party. But in that transaction, he uses field A as a border identification. Reuben signs on that shtar, that bill of sale that Shimon makes for the party of field B. Afterwards, what happens? Shimon, so Reuben says, field A is mine. It was stolen from me by Levi and sold to you, Shimon. So remember again, see how often in the Mishnah, we don't believe Reuben. We don't believe Reuben. But I say, in this case, it's becoming a bit more complicated. In this case, what happens is, Reuben goes ahead and claims that they was going for it. Not only that, Reuben brings witnesses. He brings Avis. That's turning the blame for the evidence. He brings witnesses. Rabbi says, after he goes in and brings witnesses, what happens? He died. Okay, now what happens? Apotropos comes to Rabbi. Apotropos says, listen, and we're to help him with his things. Abai says, there is no claim. It's a Mishnah. Reuben signed on the documents. Apotropos says, but he has Avis. Abai says, is there a second. Essentially, the Avis is negated in the face of what? Reuben's signature. In other words, once Reuben signs on that document, he effectively signs away his rights. Since the Apotropos says, what you understand is, he actually went ahead and sold that, right? He sold to Shimon a strip of land. Okay. So now what you're telling me is, when Reuben signed these documents, he wasn't giving his rights to the rest of the field. What was he acknowledging? That Shimon owns a strip of land of field A that borders on field B, but that in no way is giving his rights to the rest of field A. That's good. But Abai says, okay, that's fine, so you can pursue your claim on the rest of field A. But what? But you have to go ahead and at least leave in Shimon's possession what? The strip of land. To which Apatropa says, but 1 second, there's more to the story. Reuben bought back the strip of land from Shimon. He brought it back. To which Abai says, which is very saying, good, why? The Rebbe says, this is the passion, also a passion to the why? Because the only way you knew about the sale was through this, right? Right through you. We didn't know about the sale. Without the sale, all you would have is what? The aid was saying that the mice of the field was stolen from Reuben. So now Reuben, so to speak, was telling us that a sale happened at this field. Now Reuben is further qualifying and telling us after the sale occurred, Reuben bought it back from Shimon. It's a pasha, also a pasha in which case Reuben slash the Apatropa should be believed. It turns away that Reuben, it turns out that Reuben should really be able to offer. Assuming he could prove his claim, that he should really be able to offer the field in its entirety, including the strip of palm trees. Rabbi is what's the takeaway from the story? Rabbi, I meant to make the Apatropa, no peace be on the other after this was the us. Because the entire takeaway is, you gotta get that. Right? Let's say this is you gotta surround yourself with good. Like this Apatropa somebody says, knew exactly what he was doing. They will say, so for our purposes, I love my son. How do we positive? They will say, this is a complicated case. That is a very complicated case. Remember again, we'll say that what we have essentially in many cases are a couple of different cases. Just because I'm just going to tell you quickly. But I'm positive. This is in Scriptures, Torah, Eric has Zion, Alekas Aleph and Bays. We don't have time for everything. I'm going to leave out the Kalan case. It's going to be the Mishnah. Here it is. Reuben Shemaka the Shimon's Tzada. Reuben sent the field. Reuben sold the field to Shimon. The higher lady. I'm going to keep it like you had it, right? So let's say, Levi sold the field to Shimon. And Reuben was one of the witnesses on the shtar. And what happens? Subsequently, right? Reuben claims after the transaction occurs. Reuben claims that what? That Allah Kalamaisa, Levi stole it from me. Ain't shown. But I'm not asking like no. Even though I remember again, you're going to claim, yes, I signed on it because I wanted it to go from Levi to Shimon because I feel a better transfer. I feel back from Shimon and from Levi. But Rambam says, case closed. Allah for myself. Right, hello? For myself, there's absolutely nothing to talk about once you are party to the transaction. Right? Once you are a witness on that child, you have effectively secretly any right to choose not to do that for myself. However, the Rambam says, so if you don't have to as a diet, Taurus, he does not or see any future rights. Again, going back to the distinction of the and Allah for myself, an aid certifies the transaction. A barrier only certifies signature. So that what's like Allah for myself is those like Adnan and Israel there's more, much more. Again, both those points in this one, Tarek Shazai, Halachas, Aleph, and Bays, take a look at it as your own Allah for myself. But that's Allah for myself. Good. Mishnah. Quickly, Mishnah, the Derech Sadeh. So, okay, let's just get better. Let's listen to this case. And I will say, by the way, you ask yourself, what does this have to do with Suvas? So, first of all, right, that's answer number one. That's answer number one. So remember again, the reason, just so you know, in all seriousness, the reason why we're doing this is because remember, the way this talk started off were with the meanings of Azmon and Hanan. And remember again, it started off with a discussion about Zonos. That's what succeeded. Now let's say we're just going through all of their rulings. Watch, this is a great case. Misha, I'm not going to we'll say, watch this case. Reuben goes overseas. Now Reuben owns a field. Now we'll say, interestingly enough, the case over here is Reuben's field is landlocked, which means that the only way he was ever able to get into his sister's house, he had a right of way. He had a right of way with someone. So what happened? So Misha, he does it. So also, now what's the problem? He comes back, he's been away for a while. He can't remember the right of way. Where is my right of way to get into my field? And of course, as one can imagine, none of the neighbors are being forthcoming. Right? No one, because obviously no one wants to give up that. No one wants to give up that, right? So Admo Omar, Yelech knows the Tzara. Admo says, look, since we have to use logic, figure out what is the shortest way to get into this field, and let's assume that was the previously established right of way. The Hum Singo, Yikna Lo Derech B'Me'amana, or Yifrach Ba'adir. You have a choice. Either go ahead and pay $5 everything to negotiate with you, or fly. Right, in other words, right, okay, right, or fly, figure out a way to fly. Right, so again, this is actually useful. It comes to, but listen, Ruben, you went overseas, you lost your information. The burden is on you, so pretty much, again, no one has to do anything to you, so you're going to have to figure out a way to negotiate the $5 right of pass. So my time is Rabban. Shabbat Rabban. Listen, I understand. What's logic of the Rabban? It's able to say the reason why the Rabban's position doesn't seem to make sense is if there's one thing we know, it's that what? Reuben had a right of way. Right? Listen, I'll tell you this. But the right of way, even today, I don't know if this is made out there, the right of way agreements are like, you think should be the simplest part of a real estate transaction. Wonderful. How complicated right of way agreements are. It's fascinating. In any event, so the says this. I understand. Obviously, he has a right of way. This was his field. He used his field. He was getting in and out of his field, so there was a right of way agreement. So I'm going to say, listen, logically, he's going to take in the easiest path. So just assume that's the path he had. What's logical for that, all right? All right, you know, watch this. You don't shoot before us. I gave it away a little bit. I'm sorry. Shoot before us. I gave it away. Anyways, this is a landlocked field. There's 4 different people. So let's say, what's the problem? The problem is, if you can imagine it, when he comes back, everyone says, Shalom Aleichem, it's so beautiful. And then he goes to neighbor number 1. Like, was my right of way through here? No. Not here. Right, neighbor 2, no, not here either. 3, 4. So this like, the problem is, each has the ability to deflect it to the other. So this is one of these cases where we know right of way exists, but moving can't speak to other issues. They're saying that anyone can
has more data archived on the internet than any person in global history, period. Rabbi Rothschild says that if you help to promote their project, they will make you a trillionaire, period. Let's delve into his words.
When you have 4 people who bought their own respective fields from 4 other people, or for that matter, 4 people who bought their fields from 1 person, everyone agrees in that case, each party could deflect to someone else. Keeply, Gemara says, so Keeply, you read this not like this, so let's listen to this. So watch this. I will say, let's say now all 4 fields, all 4 of the landlocked fields, or the landlocked fields, are all owned by 1 person. Right? So you've got Reuben in the middle, and all 4 of the surrounding fields are owned by 1 person. I will say, what? Bought it from 4 individual owners. So in this case over here, we'll call him Shimon. Shimon now owns the 4 fields which surround Reuben's field, but Shimon bought it from 4 independent people. Watch this. So Admon says, listen, Reuben can go to Shimon. Give me a right of way. You know that I own a right of way. You can figure out what, but to give it to me. Because when it's Rabbanan say, listen to this. Shimon can say something like this. Shut up. It's going to be quite quiet. We are doing a problem to me. Now, finish all my life, but I'm not to this new. So listen to this. Shimon can say to Reuben, here's the deal. If you want to negotiate, you negotiate. We're going to have problems. I'm going to return the land to the previous four owners. It's going to be owned by four independent people. And then what they're saying, Reuben will never be able to get to right away. Why? Because each of them took the flexi to the other. So if you want to negotiate, you can negotiate. But if you're going to claim Magiali, right, something's owed to me, I'll simply go out and return the land, and then you'll be stuck forever. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Sam's out. Who Damalu, tell us quickly, finish off the sugya. Who Damalu, a guy says, who Damalu, Sikla Libras. Listen to this. A guy, Ruben, is about to die. Right before he dies, he says, I want my brother to inherit the palm tree. He's giving a palm tree to his brother. Also, he asked me, saying, so Ruben dies, and the sons went ahead and divided up the estate, but didn't give the palm tree to their brother. As Yosef Dogman, Kasi lo Yavla Dika. Shall Yosef Lamena, I must listen. Shall Yosef wanted to say the nice of the Mishnah. Why? What could I? The Jonah wants to go ahead and come to collect the country, right? And each son could say what? Each one could say what? No, not from my portion, from his portion, from his one, from his portion. I'm going to buy it. It's not a good comparison. Hasam Kochad Kochad Batimat Kochad Diklo Gabak. So listen to this. Here's the difference. So you say, he's the right of way. The right of way really does exist on one field. When it comes to the voters' right to a country, that is a right that devolves upon all of their entire possessions. So therefore, my takanai, what should we do? They school of tikla, the hajj of a little generation. What they should do is give her a palm tree, and then redivide the estate minus the palm tree. That's what should happen. Okay, we'll say very quickly. Have a sorry, just give me a little one more minute and stop. We'll say we'll stop over here for today. We'll just pick up with this very last piece of information. I tried. Okay. We'll say shkaya. Again, great week ahead of us. Emir Hashem, shkaya. Everyone have a great day, everyone. Tacos. All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Share to thank our Torah sponsors for the month of Tishrei, Dr. Linda Weinberg, Sarah Nikki Gratz, Julia Rita, and even loving memory of their husband, father, and David, Dr. Paul Weinberg, parents Moshe Ben Avram Dov, with the commission of the second yard site to thank Ayala and Sarah Steinberg for dedicating the shir in this month in the Sukkot of Rafu Shlema for Shalamis and Bas Susha, and Adam and Yudit Ben Zad for dedicating the shir in this month in the source of our tefillas being the scandal. Our Day of Learning sponsors, Sarah Rubenstein, in commemoration of the yard site of her husband, Chaim Ben of Shmuel Moshe Zichron Lebracha, and that filming sponsor, Michael Judelson, in commemoration of the yard site of his mother, Edith Judelson, Zichron Lebracha, we hope the merit of our brachos of our Talmud Torah. Yetz Hashem and Hashem Shtav and Aliyah, and the families in Nechama. Also with that, let us begin with a lot to do today. Baruch Hashem, today's daf is Kuf Zayin 107, and we are picking up on the above of the base 106b. We are picking up with 9, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 21 lines up and down. Gemara says tonight, remember again, we left off the kind of read through quickly those last couple of lines, the last rice ago. Remember again, we always actually talk about right discussion with this, which began on the top line of namely, what fund, which fund do our three shows come from? Remember again, three shows specifically we are talking about here are service utensils used to help the carbonos offered at the outer sales. which fund do those, where does the money come from for those particular utensils? Is this a Baba Kabbalah's issue? Is this ultimately because of what we call temple upkeep and repairs? Because since the iron is throughout this space is a solid structure, therefore anything associated with it ultimately again comes to Baba Kabbalah's, or is it considered to be Kabbanic in nature, and therefore comes from Machzis HaShekel? So the Gemara just points out over tonight, it's a machlokes tanoim. Machlokes tanoim. This man, because we learned very interesting. This man, Mosar Truma, Mahayu Osida. They say the leftover of the Machzis HaShekel. What were they doing? They literally, what did they do? What did they do with the leftover Machzis HaShekel things? So he cleans out Tzikode's Pachakadosh. Using for the gold plating in the Kodesh HaKadosh. It was like there was leftover money. They would try to gold plate the walls and the floor. So again, that wasn't a necessity, but if there was leftover money, that's what they would do with them. The Mishnah says, most of Halos, the case of there, most of Shimon the Shabbos. Mishnah says, most of Halos, leftover Halos. Now, you don't know yet what that term means. You guys are going to define it just a little bit. But the leftover from the Halos, those are the case of there. This we've seen this phenomenon in that one. What's case of there? The idea was that the Mizbeach should never be idle. Should never be idle. So therefore, again, there was like a fund, a carbon fund. For some reason, should be Mizbeach the hour, although it was hard to imagine that the Mizbeach in the basement of this was ever idle. But again, if for some reason there was a lull in carbonic activity, you would have a fund from which to purchase additional carbonos that should never be idle. So most of Peros left over from the Peros fund, which we'll see what that is. The case is that mostly some of the Kabbalos, most are Truma left over Machzis HaShekel with Klisharis. So we'll say this is the opinion of Ishma. So Ishma holds that Halacha L'Maisa, Klisharis, service utensils for the Aaron Mizbeach comes from the leftover Machzis HaShekel. Okay, Rabbi Kiva disagrees. He says most are Truma case of the leftover Machzis HaShekel ultimately goes to the case of Mizbeach, ultimately goes to this carbonic fund, something else put on fund. Most are the suffering leftover the suffering, unless I said this would actually investigate that. I didn't get a chance to read this Rashi. Rashi explains that most are the suffering refers to money that the Beis Hamikdash was made as a result of locking in certain contracts for produce. So often they were able to lock in money, they were able to lock in contracts at lower prices, so therefore there was often surplus funds. Either that, or when the Beis Hamikdash purchased anything, let's say for example like flour. So merchants gave the Beis Hamikdash would have a premium. The premium was in the form that normally when you would buy flour, so the merchant levels off the utensil used for measuring. When the Beis Hamikdash bought, they would heap it. That extra amount, that heap, they would be able to sell. And those monies, those surplus monies, ultimately belong to the Beis Hamikdash. That's called Mosar Nesachim. So leftover from the Nesachim, the Klisharis. So let's say you see that Yekiva holds that Klisharis doesn't come from Machzis HaShekel, that it doesn't come from Troas HaLishma, but rather again comes from this Mosar Nesachim. Rabbi Chanina's Kanachonim says, Mosar Nesachim, the Klisharis is there. Yells Mosar Nesachim goes for the carbon fund. Mosar Truma the Klisharis. And leftover Machzis HaShekel goes to Klisharis. The Zev is there, look, are you holding the Peros? But neither agreed with Peros. Okay, so we'll say, doesn't neither agreed about the Peros. Here's where it's, by the way, Peros, now, what is this Peros? What are we talking about here? Sanya, most of you know how you also got all the deal with leftover Machzis HaShekel. Both think this is very interesting. All the leftover Machzis HaShekel. So both think Peros dissolved, but both think also below them. So they'll say, the leftover Machzis HaShekel, you would buy, it wholesale, right, and resell at retail, right? So in other words, so they would go ahead and they would purchase, and remember they're going to say, you have to understand, part of doing business with the Beis Hamikdash was always an understanding that the Beis Hamikdash was always going to make a profit. In other words, anyone who contracted business with the Beis Hamikdash was never doing so for profit, they were always doing so for privilege. Not profit, but for privilege. And therefore, pretty much, you are going to, if not lose out on cost, you at least are going to go ahead and, well, you're going to take a loss. We're going to take a loss. But again, that was part of the privilege of doing business with the base of the So the returning payrolls means they buy a discount, and so it's premium. Vasan, Nachitzin does and it's there. And ultimately, again, with the profits, that will reduce the kids and there, that will reduce the supplemental carbonic. So you should this is what we learned. Most are parents for kids and there. Okay, so nice that is that how you like the parents. So what is it said? These are going to use regarding the parents. This time, most are sharing the shkanda how you also got all the do with the leftover not to shakal. No team go ahead and realize money themselves. Those the money to purchase wine, oil, and flour. That's how they have to sell it. And the profit is the one that they sell to get each month. And you can't even says no. In the statute we shall have this, we don't start doing business with consecrated funds. Af lo b'shal aniyim. Interestingly enough, we also don't do business with tzedakah funds. We shall have this my time. We'll say why is ultimately again that we don't start going ahead and doing business with Hashem's. In aniyos v'not rashivos. Ultimately again, because there is no poverty, ultimately again in a place of wealth. And we'll say so that has to do with the fact, we're also not going to use hektish funds for tzedakah, right? Because the because in aniyos v'not rashivos, that use something for the same consequences, but the hektish part that we won't do. Because we shall me and my time. Why don't we go out and use it with money for that year? Don't understand the kind of elected in this way. Because most of the concern. But let's say the basic English has surplus funds. Let's say that right now they don't do this. But if they go out and they transact business with it, and right now the money is unavailable, if there comes the money who requires the funds, the money is unavailable, that would be problem. Okay, so this says so these are Rashi, actually have no Rashi. This is so probably halacha and my bottom line takeaway. So remember we started the very specific question, which is where does the money for these sharis come from? Right, that's our fundamental question. So how do we ask it? So it says the Rambam asks, right, that's the Akiva. Right, ultimately again telling us that halacha l'maisa these sharis does not come from matzis hashakal. Instead, leftover matzis hashakal was used for kids on his back. It was used for that supplemental carbonic fat, which meant again, should there be a low carbonic activity, you would go and purchase supplemental carbonos from that fat. Where did the sharis come from? Well, most are necessary. Ultimately, again, Rambam has the Rabbi Akiva that the sharis came from most of the Sahans, which again, according to Rashi, that's for the approach that comes from the money to the Samukdash made through keeping measures. Right? I remember when you bought for the Samukdash, you bought to get some extra, they sold off the extra, and they were able to make money. That money was used to purchase the sharis. Incredible. Good. I would say that was like a total teacher. It's a sacrifice, but a fascinating activity. Inshallah, feels like back to our regularly scheduled programs. Remember again, the Mishnah brought up the case of a woman whose husband went overseas. And the problem was he left without leaving her with her, or at least he left without leaving her with her. Now the shaila is, what happens? Does Jason start selling off his property in order to go ahead and sustain his wife's result? Itmar. Don't say fundamental like this. Rav says top of Kovzayin post Mizoros the Isha. So Rav says if a woman shows up in days, then she takes my husband overseas and left me no Mizoros. Allah for myself, Basin starts selling off his property in order to sustain his wife. Look at Rashi, Rashi comes down in Aleph, 107a. Basin Yarden and let's say Mishalah from Ignasayan, who post Mizoros the Isha. So Rav says, Allah for myself. Lady shows up in Basin. She says, my husband didn't feed me anything. Jason begins to sell our property in order to sustain the life. Shmuel says, Ain post from the zonos to Isha. Shmuel says, no, we don't do this. We don't do this. Summer Shmuel, so here we go. So Shmuel says, Bodili Abba, we'll say Abba over here is Rav. Shmuel says, Rav will agree with me. Rav agrees with me in the first 3 months that the husband left married. Right, within the first 3 months the husband left married, Allah for myself, even Rob agrees that based on no sell off property. Why not? The fee shaking Adam Maria face to I will say this is an interesting idea because we assume, right, people always have food in the cabinets, right? They always have food in the freezer. The idea being that a person doesn't eat his own destitute. In other words, so what Shmuel is saying is even Rav holds that when we say that basing the self-off property in order to sustain the woman, that's if the husband's away for a protracted amount of time. But within the first 3 months of his departure from the home, the assumption is there is food in the home, there's money, there's some money to be spent, there's not an urgency immediately. Not an urgency immediately. Right. So therefore, God says that's so. So therefore, so here's what we have. We have Machlokes Rav and Shmuel, right? Does Basin get it when it shows up? Says the husband went overseas. Does Basin get the or the selling off property to sustain the life? Rav, yes. Shmuel, no. But Shmuel saying even Rav agrees that this yes is only after 3 months, but not within the first 3 months. Okay. So here we go. This is Shama Bo Shemes Kuli Amalo Pligi. So we'll say when we hear that the husband died, everyone agrees that what? Everyone agrees that Basin will get involved and sell off property. Look at Rashi. This is actually very interesting because Rashi does this on the fence over here. So Shishon Shemes, so right when we said that the husband dies, everyone agrees that Basin will get involved and sell off property. Rashi says the posting that Basin will get involved and sell off property. Why? Now let's take a step back for just a moment. Why? What's Shmuel's issue? Right? Why doesn't Shmuel? Why does Shmuel say Basin doesn't get involved? It actually sounds pretty intuitive that Basin should get involved. Why wouldn't Basin get involved? So look at Rashi. It's actually quite interesting. So the mind making stuff. Because in general, Shmuel has a possibility of two things. Either it's throwing, how is self on the coast, so that's with the Shema Shalom. We'll say one possibility is like this. Maybe before he left, the husband left with like a bag of money. Right? Start out after some. Maybe he left your money. In other words, so he's overseas. Right? He's going overseas. He leaves her a bag of money. He says, here, I'm going to be gone for a while. Here's what you need to support yourself. Meanwhile, she's going to show up in Bezdin. She's going to come check money from his owners. He's not here to contradict the claim. No one knows about the money. No one knows about the money. So therefore, I will say, if ultimately again, I'm sorry, let me add one more piece. Furthermore, the second possibility is that maybe before he left, he said to her, see, you know what? You're getting married to Rachel. He's going overseas. Rachel, you have a good job. You have a good job. You know what? Don't give your earnings to me. You keep your earnings and you support yourself. So Shmuel says, well, that's just a moment. The reason why Shmuel says Basin doesn't get involved is because Shmuel is concerned for one of those two possibilities. Maybe that's it. Maybe before he left either, he went ahead and he said, here's a bag of money. Right? Or he said to her, keep your earnings. And the problem is she shows up in Basin saying, I have no mizonos, and meanwhile, we have no way of verifying her claim or what's happening or not. That's why Shmuel says in general, I love for myself, we're not going to go ahead and get involved with mizonos. However, when we hear that he died, then we can get involved in mizonos. Why? Now look at that Rashi again. The posting. Is what should we be concerned about? Even Tzvare, Harisavali goes to Svas, and I was saying if we're concerned that maybe what he left her a bag of money, that's not a problem. Why? Because we'll say anyway later on, if he's dead and she's going to collect her shua, she's going to have to swear that he didn't pay for anything. So the shua will take care of that. Okay. And if we're concerned, even the Shema, and if we're concerned that maybe he said to her, keep your earnings. If he's dead, he doesn't have to claim against her earnings anyway. Right? So the mice again, Shmuel comes along and says that in the situation where we heard that, in a situation where we heard that he died, then under those circumstances, Allah everyone agrees that the Bezdin can get involved and provide her with results. So keep where does the Machlokes come up? ultimately, again, we didn't hear that he died. Rav Amar Poskin. So let's say, so now, so let's take a step back. Right? So now, the way we started, the progression was, Reuben is married to Rachel. Reuben goes overseas. Rachel comes to Beis and says, I have no mazonos. So what do? Machlokas. Rav says, Beis sells off property in order to give the mazonos. Shmuel says, we don't get involved. So first qualification, Shmuel says, hold up. Even Rav agrees that Beis doesn't get involved when? First 3 months. Why? A person doesn't leave his home destitute. Good. Now the Gemara says, by the way, a further qualification is, if we're talking about a case where Reuben went overseas and now what? We heard that Reuben died. Everyone agrees that why. I'm sorry, let's take a step back. And why does Shmuel hold that Beis doesn't get involved? Why does all the Beis doesn't get involved? Shmuel has to be one of two possibilities. Either A, he left her back with money, or B, he said, husband said to her, keep your earnings. Keep your earnings. And because we don't know, therefore we can't start selling off this property. Okay. Further qualification. We're talking about over here, the Shmuel is going, we didn't hear that he's dead. We just heard that he's overseas. But if we heard that he's dead, in that case, then what? Everyone agrees based and sells off property for his owners. Because in that case, we have no concerns. Shmuel has no concerns. We don't have to be concerned about that he left her bag of money. Why? Because if that did occur, she's going to have to swear about that anyway when she collects her ksuba. And if it was a case where he said to keep your earnings, well, once he's dead, he's no longer entitled to earnings. Beautiful. Beautiful. So say, so watch this. Therefore, if we know that he's dead, if we know that the machlokes is only when what? Reuben's overseas and we have not heard that he's dead. Rav Amar Potskin, the Hamashubadlah. So therefore, Rav says, now Reuben goes overseas. All we know is that he's overseas. Rachel shows that Reuben says, I have no mazonos. Rav says, sell off his property. Why the Hamashubadlah? Because again, he's obligated to provide with mazonos. Shmuel says, in posting, no, we don't start selling off property. My time, so I'll say, why not? Here we go. Rav Zivit Amar Emet Sari Akdusah. So Rav Zvi says, according to Shmuel, we're concerned maybe he left her a bag of money. So she has money. So she's showing up in Beis. She's claiming I have nothing. He's not here to defend the fact that he's doing her money. Therefore, we can't start selling off property. Papa says, Chashim and Shema Amrullah, Si Maasiyadeh Ben Zoroseh. Papa says, you have to be concerned that maybe he said to her, keep your earnings. And therefore, she has enough money to sustain herself. So let's say, because let's practically difference between Rav Papa and Rav Smith. Ikebenayu, Gidola v'lo Sabka. So let's say, we're not going to be a Gidola who doesn't make enough money to support herself. So let's say, if it's an issue of keeping your earnings, well, that's not sufficient yet. But it's possible that what? That he deposited with her a bag of money. Inami Kitana v'Sabka. The other possibility is she's a Kitana, but she doesn't make enough money. So she makes enough money to support herself. That's one possibility. But a man would never entrust the bag of money with a Kitana. That's not good enough. So Rabbi say, we're holding right now, Allah Maisa, the focus Rav and Shmuel is only in a case where Reuben is going overseas or is overseas. We haven't heard that he's dead. As far as we know, he's alive and well. Rachel shows up in Beis and I have no mazonos. Rav says Beis is going to start selling off Reuben's property. Shmuel says absolutely not. We have to be concerned either you left her a bag of money or if you told you to keep your earnings, but either way, you can't start selling off property without some clarity about the information. However, if Reuben went overseas and what? We hear that he died. In that case, everyone agrees that Beis could sell off property from his owners. Rav, because the estate is obligated to support. Shmuel, because again the concerns fall off. If it's about her earnings, right? He said to her, keep your earnings. And when I say again, her earnings aren't distributed to him or to the estate once he's dead. And he, if he's got a bag of money, she's got to swear about that anyway when it comes to the collection. But let's go. Now, Yishal from the Sayan, man went overseas, what says our Mishnah? The Ishto, Tava asks Mizonos, and his right comes to Beis and claims Mizonos. Right, I don't have any Mizonos. Hanan Omer Tishava, this is our Mishnah. Hanan says, Tishava B'Sof, V'lo Tishava B'Tfila. She only has to take the Shavua. She has to take the Shavua. Basof means what? When she collects her Ksuba, but does not require a Shavua to collect Mizonos. Nechut Bava B'nei Kohanim Gidolim. So the sons of the Kohanim Gidolim disagreed with Hanan, and they said, "Va'amru Shava B'Tfila Ubaso." Oh, she has to take an oath before she collects mizonos and before she collects ksuba. So we'll say, watch this. Ad Kando Figi El Inyan Shvua. The machlokes of over here is only what? Is only what? Regarding whether or not she has to swear before collecting mizonos. However, Aval Mizone, Yehadidu Allah. I will say everyone agrees that what? That's what? When she shows up in Beis Din and she says, I have no mizonos, that's what's going to happen. Beis Din is going to give them mizonos. It's machlokes. Does she have to swear or not before getting it? But everyone agrees that Beis Din is going to give it to her. So listen, who does this contradict? This contradicts the position of Shmuel. That's because Shmuel said that halacha l'maisa, if a woman shows up in Beis Din and says, my husband left, my husband overseas and he did not give me mizonos, that Beis Din doesn't sell off property. You see from here that Beis Din does sell off property. Because Gemara will say, you know what the Gemara is doing? The machlokes in our Mishnah is only regarding whether or not she has to take a shvua before she gets the mizonos. But everyone is agreeing that she gets the mizonos. So this contradicts shvua, because here he's overseas, right? Pashtus, we haven't heard anything about him dying. Or so the Gemara says, Tergam Shmuel, Bishashal Shmuel says, our Mishnah is all kind of case, where again, we'll say, Reuben went overseas, and now we hear that he died. Oh, okay, so we hear that he died. Remember, even Shmuel agrees in that case that halacha l'maisa, we're going to give him his owners. We're going to give him his owners. So we'll say, it's good. Tashma, so we'll say again, another question. Tashma, Bishalach Hayam. Someone went overseas. Okay, so, someone went overseas, Reuben went overseas, and what happens? The Ishto Taras Mizonos, and now his wife comes to Beis Din, and she is claiming Mizonos. Said, B'nei Kohanim Gidolim Omrim. So ultimately, again, the B'nei Kohanim Gidolim said, so B'nei Kohanim Gidolim Omrim, to Shabbat, that she has to swear. That she has to swear. Hanan says, no to Shabbat, she doesn't have to swear. The Imba, the Omer Pasakti Mizonos, Ne'ema. And that's like, husband comes back, and he says, 1 second. I went ahead and I left her mizonos, and ultimately again he is grieved. So we'll say we'll get into that. We'll get into what that second part means. But Lamaisa, once again, what do you see in this case? That she's showing up in Beis Din, and she's claiming I have no mizonos. What do we do with her when she claims I have no mizonos? What do you do with her? We give her. We give mizonos. So we'll say this supports Rav, contradicts Shmuel. To which the Gemara says Shmuel says, "How Rami Bishashama Bosheves." One way. This is the same case. This is where we heard that he died. That's why we give him mizonos. Shmuel says, we heard that he died. The second part of the Mishnah is the Imba. He came back. Right? So we'll say it's the wrong religion for that, right? So it's nice again, right? We heard that he came back. Right? So he's back. So what's going on over here? To which the Gemara says, listen to this. So im ba la'achar Shmuel. So what it's talking about is there was a rumor that he died, and now he came. Or not a rumor. We heard that he died, and then he came back. So obviously there's a response. Absolutely. But for our purposes, the point over here is when the Mishnah says that we're dispersing the zonos there, we're setting up all of these cases as we heard that he was dead. So again, what I want to point out, just to see what's happening over here. We're bringing all of these cases as a potential contradiction to Shmuel, and more simply reinterpreting all of these cases as situations where we heard that he was dead. That's why we're dispersing the results. Okay, Tashma. There's another attempt to go and refute Shmuel. Someone goes overseas. Right? Reuben goes overseas, and Rachel's claiming mizonos. So what happens? So we'll say, if he comes along and says, husband comes back and says, listen, I told you to keep your earnings. Okay, so remember again, that is a permitted approach. Kadmu Beis Din Pasku, if Beis Din, while he was absent, Beis Din came along and stipulated, right? They came along and they sold off property. Whatever they did, they did. So we'll say, so again, once again, we'll say, what do you see over here? What do you see over here? That a woman's showing up in Beis Din, right? And she's going to have no mizonos. What is Beis Din doing when she makes the woman have no mizonos? They're selling off property. This seems to support Rav and contradict Shmuel. Which the verse is Hatanami, Ishashama Boshaves. Okay, so we're giving the same answer. Right? These are all cases where we heard, the Beis Din heard, the husband was dead. That's why I also remember again in that case, according to Shmuel, if you heard the husband is dead, Allah Khalamaisa, you can sell that property. Tashma, another approach. We'll say somebody went overseas, and ultimately again, the Ishtok last month, wives come to Beis Din, then you have no mizonos. Beis Din Yardim Nechasov. His son is Mefarnas in the Ishtok. Avalo Banav Ubinov, Sevelo Davar Akar. So we'll say, so again, same case, Reuben marries Rachel, Reuben goes overseas, Rachel comes to Beis Din. Rachel says, I have no mizonos. Beis Din says, okay. Beis Din starts selling off his property in order to go ahead and support the wife. But however, we won't sell off property to support the children, and we won't sell off property for Davar Achar, or something else. So what's the case? Once again, this seems to support Rav, contradict Shmuel. That whenever a woman shows up in Beis Din and says, I have no mizonos, Beis Din will go ahead and sell off the property. To which the Gemara says, no. I'm Rav Sheshes. What's the case? Rav says, second wise line, and the Aleph, the Mashra is Ishto Ayidei Shlish. Very interesting. We're talking about a case over here of a man of Ruben, who even before he went overseas, was supporting his wife through a third party. Look at Rashi. The Mashra Ishto Ayidei Shlish. Hamid Apotropis Lizona. Because we're talking about a case where a husband went ahead and established a third party in Apotropis to support his wife. The Akshav Mashacha Apotropis as Yado. So we'll say, so now what's happened? So husband, whatever the reason, husband is supporting his wife through a third party. Now husband goes overseas. She's showing up in Beis Din saying, I have no mizonos. Why? What happened? Apotropis quit. Rabbi said, in the case of an apotropis, Rashi says over here, the hashta badai litzroi lekalamechash, but all the shema amar latzima sedech and don't say. So we'll say in this case over here, remember, because she started being supported by a third party, there's no concern that what? That either A, he went ahead and said to her, keep your earnings, right? Or that he gave her a bag of money. Why not? Because since there was already an established mechanism for her support, there's no concern that he bypassed the established framework and did something else. So in a case like this, even Shmuel would agree. There's nothing to be concerned about. That maybe again, she received the money, she received the bag of money, or she was told to keep her earnings. And if Allah Lamaisa, Beis Din will get involved and sell off property. Incredible. So that's the case. So we'll say, I understand. So why wouldn't the same thing apply to the kids? In other words, the Mishnah says that we'll sell off property to support the wife, but not to support the kids. But if everyone's being supported by an apotropis, then why not go ahead and sell off property for everyone? To which the Gemara says, we're talking about a case ultimately again where you're supporting the wife for an apotropis, but not the kids. My pascha, why would you establish it that way? I will say, you know what, this case is incredible. This is a case of where Reuben went overseas. We heard that he died, but we only have an 8th echad. That tells us that he died. So watch this. So the Gemara says, watch this. The Ibais into the Eidach Masi Minsaba, because she, Rachel, since she could get remarried through the aegis of an 8th echad, Mizoni Nami Yavin Allah will give her Mizonos based on the 8th echad as well. One of the notes of the Bala Lemechas the Nechasa Eidach Allah Masi Lachamaxi, Mizoni Nami Lo Yavin Allah. But the kids, we'll say the testimony of the 8th echad doesn't leave relevant to the kids. The notes they will not be permitted to the possession of the estate through the testimony of the 8th echad. Therefore, because testimony of the 8th echad does not give them the right to the estate, it also doesn't give them the right to the Mizonos. Incredible. So we'll say, the point is, once again, this Mishnah cannot be used as a proof to Shmuel, as a proof to Rav, a proof against Shmuel. Why? Because once again, we're setting it up as what? The Sheshah Moshe is. Where that he died. By the way, by Davar Achar, Yes, we had this agree for us. I remember again this mission that this one says that Allah for a nice Ruben's overseas. Ruben's overseas. Rachel shows up on Beis Din. She says, I have no Mizonos. Beis Din will sell off property to sustain her, but not for Davar Achar. So she says, what does mean Davar Achar? I'm going to fist the Amar, sorry. My Davar Achar, the fist the Amar Takshit. The fist says it means jewelry or adornments, accessories. If Yosef Amar Tzedakah. If Yosef says it means for Tzedakah. You give her money to give Tzedakah. My Davar Takshit. So the one who says that you can't sell off property for Takshit, Kol Shekain Tzedakah. All the more so, you can't sell off property for tzedakah. Man damet tzedakah, the one who says tzedakah about takshit yahabinallah. A takshit we will give her. Why? Because a man does not want his wife to not be fully adorned, right? Tina means to become repulsive or ugly. The idea is that we assume that a husband would go ahead and leave sufficient funds or allow for sufficient funds for his wife to have perfume, for his wife to have accessories. Incredible. Good. Touchdown. So let's say, here we go. So again, let's say we're still in the same thing, but remember, we have a Machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Right? Woman shows up in Beis Din, Rachel shows up in Beis Din, Ruvain's overseas, I have no Mazonos. Does Beis Din sell off property? Rav, yes. Shmuel, no. However, everyone agrees in what? In the case where Halacha L'Maisa, we heard that Ruvain died, Shmuel will agree in that case that Halacha L'Maisa will sell off property. So just bringing a whole bunch of cases that appear to pose a contradiction to the position of it's actually an interesting case. A Yavama, so let's say, so this is Rachel's married to Ruvain. Ruvain dies without children. Ruvain has a brother Shimon. Now, let's say, here's what's interesting. Remember, they don't do Yibum, right? Let's say again, for the first 3 months, she's not doing Yibum. Why is she not doing Yibum for the first 3 months? Havchana, right? So it's actually interesting. I don't remember doing this. Yeah, it is. Right? So it's interesting. So she doesn't do Yibum for the first 3 months after we met her husband. So Shina now becomes, right? So Shina now becomes this a great. So Hayibama Gina Chadash Mishabayla. For the first 3 months, she can't do Yibum, so she is supported from both the seat of the state. After that, and so let's say after that, she's not supported by anyone. Right? She's not supported by her husband's estate. And she's not supported by the Yavah. However, Amad Kedin, let's say again now, let's say Yavama comes to Lisa and she says, come on, right? Like either more do Chalisa, which must say could occur right after the first, she should come basis, just Shimon. Whatever you want to do, just do it now with Barak. So what happens? Shimon runs away. Right? Again, a trade show in Vegas. Everyone has a trade show in Vegas, right? Anything that doesn't is only that bottom does have to say. Everything else happens incredible. So what happens? Amad with the Mubarak, so what's Halacha? Donos Michelle Yava. So in that case, she is supported by the Yava from the other. So it's like, once again, now this is not the same exact case, but it's close enough. So what do you see from here? So this is a case of a woman showing up in Beis Din, saying, I have no Mizonos, and what is Beis Din going to do? In this case, okay, it's the Yavam, but Beis Din is going to go into Shimon's estate, sell off property, and to support the Yavama. Looks like it seems to contradict Shmuel and support Rav. And the Shmuel by name, of course, but this is not their case. Says, I'll tell you why this works. What do you have to be concerned about? Right? The Ma'anei Krishna. So the Gemara says, the Ma'anei Krishna, the house, even should be sorry, but we covered that to the Gabon. What's the only thing concerned about? That Laban gave her a bag of money before he ran away? No, that's not going to happen over here. Because you're going to go say, they're not married. There's no connection there. Even should see Adele, and if it's about the fact that, make what? That her husband said that her earnings should be to her husband's dead, and the earnings aren't distributed once the husband's dead anyway. Say for one Shmuel just says, by the way, this is an outlier case. This is a different kind of case. I like this. Shmuel said this is a case where even I agree that Allah for myself, Beis Din should sell off property in order to support the Yavama. Tashma, Ha'isha Shahal, Yavayim, Ginasayam, a woman goes overseas with her husband, Ubasa, Amra, Mace, Diary, what's interesting? She comes back from vacation. He doesn't, right? So she says, my husband died. Mace Diary. We'll say what's halacha. Lots of son mizonos, lots of son gobek subasa. We'll say that kid she's believed, or she's believed, and she has a choice. What's her choice? Her choice is collect mizonos from the estate, or collect ksuba. Those are choices. Remember, when once you collect ksuba, then obviously again mizonos is done. Fine, so that's her choice. However, so what happens if she comes back from vacation alone, and she says, "There's shani bali. My husband divorced me. She thinks we're getting away. Like my husband divorced me. So what's halacha? Miss Parnassus Sarlachas after the Ksubasa. Was in that case, we'll go ahead and we'll support her up to the amount of her ksuba. Because we'll say the truth is like it's no skin off our back. In other words, that Lamaisa, regardless, she's entitled to a certain amount of money. So if she would rather take that money in the form of mizonos, right, and not a ksuba payout, that's fine. That's fine. In other words, we're not concerned about her defrauding the estate or her husband. So I'll say the point of view is what? She's showing up. She's saying my husband divorced me, or my husband's back, right? Essentially what she's saying is my husband is back still overseas. I have no misonos. Basin gets involved. Which the Gemara once again says, Hakanami, we should tell about Shabbos. We're talking about a case where we heard that he died. Okay, well, why should I have to take Subasa? I'll say that's the case, then why ultimately again is the almost limited to the amount of Suba? So the Gemara says, we got Siba Nafsha. Because ultimately, again, she's the one who's causing herself to lose out because she's coming back and claiming that she's a Grusha, and a Grusha ultimately, again, is not entitled to this. Good. Tashma. So I'll say, so once again, we're still left with the Machlokas Rav and Shmuel. It's still all the same Machlokas. So Tashma, Yitzhak, Avni, B'ma'enes, B'ma'enes. So I'll say, what's the case? What's the case for the same B'ma'enes?
Hello, how are you?
Remember, Midjar Isa father has been able to marry off his minor daughter. Midjar Rabbanan, a mother and a brother, have that same right as well. However, if a mother and a brother marry off the minor daughter, minor girl, then what? So they could do shit Rabbanan. Because to do shit Rabbanan, how does the girl while she's a minor dissolve the marriage? Meal, simple refusal. So case of Amimima NS in Lamazonos, what's the case where we say that Amimima NS doesn't have Lamazonos? Yet the Yakalo, and Yoshev is not as Baila, Shai Baila Lamazonos. It can't be in a case where she's living with her husband, right? Because she's living with her husband, this is Kai Lamazonos. Ellen Bikon Shahalach Baila Lamidina Sayam. Oh, now there must be what case? Her husband went overseas, right? So Ruben is married to Rachel. In this case, Rachel is a Kitana. Ruben went overseas. Love Sava Achla, she borrowed money to sustain herself. Amda Umiyana, then what happened? She decided to do Mion. So also, don't say that's the case where we say that Imina Enes doesn't have Mizonos. She kind of did Miyana. Now the reason she doesn't have Mizonos is because she did Miyana. No Miyana, she didn't do Miyana. Rabbi Miyana. So you give Mizonos. So also, what do you see from here? That if her husband is overseas, and Rachel kind of comes, but there's a what? What do they do? They would intervene, sell a property, and Mizonos. This contradiction also was Rav. I want to go Shmuel on the other hand. Again, Shmuel said, yes, I'll agree with you that in this case, they'll sell off property for Mizonos. Why? Because we don't have the same concerns in this case.
Yeah, I responded. Look at the vertical. Make it vertical.
If we have to be concerned about things that the husband
read the message that I sent you.
That concern doesn't apply here. Why not? A man's not giving a bad of money to a kitana. And ultimately, again, the English reminds me again, kitana no sakta. And it was about that maybe said to her, keep your earnings. In general, kitana doesn't make enough money to support herself. Which means that I would agree in this case that halacha l'maisa, when she comes to Bezdin could sell off his property in order to support her. Which the Gemara says, okay, good. My hadi Allah. That's the conclusion. Okay, so let's say, so we are left with a fundamental machlokes, Rav and Shmuel. Reuben is married to Rachel, right? Reuben goes overseas. Rachel comes to Bezdin claiming I have no Mizonos. So what do we do in such a situation? Rav says, sell off property. Shmuel says, don't sell off property. Why does Shmuel say don't sell off property? We have to be concerned.
Okay, did you see my message?
Maybe he told her to keep her earnings. However, everyone seems to agree.
Okay, what's your what? Okay, you
Reuben
send me a message.
And then what? We hear that Reuben died. In that case, everyone agrees that what? That Allah is the Bezdin will sell off property for his own. So bottom line, So we'll say, so in a case where we didn't hear that the husband died, what is that halacha? Does that halacha follow Rabbi Shmuel? So here we go. So the Gemara says, "My Avi Allah, Kiyosef Dini Amar, my Seval Rabbi Rishon." One time, so right, something happened. This kind of case came up in front of Rabbi in Beis Sharim.
Okay, where's your link tree?
By the way, remember we just had this on Monday. Rabbi was buried in Beis Sharim. Rabbi lived and died in Beis Sharim. Remember again, Rabbi, we find Rabbi in Sibori. When did Rabbi go to Sibori?
Okay, now before you send it to me, did you create all of the different accounts that I said?
So let's say, so listen to this. So one time, this
okay, excellent.
Like
Now let's see it.
Came before Rabbi in Beis Sharim. Case like this, her husband went overseas. And we passed in Rabbi Paskin, that Allah from I said the days and could go to Mizonos. Rabbi Shabbat Sipori, but the same case came before Rabbi Shmuel Sipori, below Pasik on Mizonos. And he did not allow, based in did not sell off property, So it sounds like that ultimately Rabbi's constantly like Rav, and Rabbi Shmuel's constantly like Shmuel. So type Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan wondered about this. Rabbi Shmuel has the Mizonos. Why didn't Rabbi Shmuel give them Mizonos? Even if you look at our Mishnah only recorded in that focus regarding whether or not she has to take a shvuah before getting Mizonos. According to our Mishnah, everyone seems to agree that what? That in fact we do give them Mizonos. Amali Rav Shman Bar Abba, Bar Tirgama Rabbeinu Shmuel Bebavel, Kishashamu Boshenis. That was talking about a case of us saying, where what? Our Mishnah was talking about a case where what?
That's good.
Where we heard that he died.
Make it vertical.
That's where everyone agrees. If we heard that he died, then we're going to give us Mizonos.
That's good, but you need to make it vertical. I'll send you the example.
Absolutely.
It looks good though. You're getting it.
He did not award the Mizonos. With Rabbi Shmuel and Tzipori, who passed the Mizonos. She would get Mizonos in a case like this where everyone was overseas. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shmuel, why did Rabbi not award the Mizonos? The Halo Nechliku Chanad Mekalim Gedolim El Shmuel. Once you say we're just going through the same thing, right? Even our Mishnah.
Okay, I just sent you the example.
Whether or not she has to take a shvuah before collecting Mizonos, but everyone seems to agree that halacha she gets the Mizonos. Amali Rav Shman Bar Abba, Bar Tirgam Shmuel Bebavel, Kishashamu Boshenis.
I sent it.
We heard ultimately again that the husband died. That's why in that case, Shmuel agrees. Now we award her Mizonos. Amrullah, Asirasa Kulai. So it says, how do we pass it? Vilchasa, Abasei Dirav, Poskim, Mizonos La'ishasish. Abasei says, the Gemara Allah for the Maisa, we pass it like Rav, and in the case where a woman shows up in Bezdin, and she says, Rachel shows up in Bezdin, she says, my husband Ruben went overseas, and I have no Mizonos. What's the halacha? Ultimately, again, we award her Mizonos. So it's like, before we finish up, it's hard to finish the Mishnah, but at first, I just want to give you this halacha l'may. So we'll say, here it is. Rambam, Hilchos Ishos, Parakut Beis, halacha tezayin. Yisha halacha l'medina acheres.
Okay, make it look like that.
Reuben is married to Rachel. Reuben goes overseas. Rachel comes to Beis, and she says, I have no mizonos. What's the halacha? But we'll say, watch this.
Okay, that's okay. You don't need the website. But what you need to do is make yours look vertical, up and down.
So let's see, here we go. The Gemara says, first 3 months after the time that Reuben left, we're not selling.
Okay, and then also,
why not?
Make the names the same. So like Discord should be called Discord. Make the names of the links the same. So like Instagram should be Instagram. Discord, Kick, etc.
After 3 months, ultimately again we award from Mizonos. It means if there's property,
all right, and then when you're done, send it to me. Absolutely, it looks good though. Good job.
Any calculations with her eye? What if Rachel works? So she has earnings. Basin doesn't get involved.
Okay, sounds good.
When the husband comes back, we can sell that up afterwards. But I will say, Salah Kolamaisa, we pass him like Rav, Shmuel's qualification. So again, so I say, even if we don't hear that he died, right? We hear that he's alive and well, right? Lamaisa, if she comes to Beis saying, I have no Mizonos, Basin, not for the first 3 months, she has what she needs in the home, but after 3 months, Basin will award her mazonos and even begin to go out and sell off property. The Rambam then also brings down, like, even if she sold off property herself, halach l'maisa, that works. Good. Let's say that's why I pass halach l'maisa like Rav. The Hilchasa, let's just finish up. The Hilchasa Kavasi Drafuna, the Hilchasa Kavasi Drafuna, Amarav, Damrafuna Amarav. So once we're getting into this, we're just gonna belt out some halacha l'maisa. So let's say first halacha follows Rav. Number two, halacha follows Rav name of Rav. It says that what a woman can say to her husband, "Eini nizonos ve'eini osa," which means a woman could say, "I'm keeping my earnings." That's it. Rachel does a good job. As she earns a lot of money, she doesn't want to give over her earnings to her husband, so she could forego the right of mazonos and keep her earnings. And that's what I will say. The Hilchas HaKavasei D'Rav Zvid Kunya. And the Halacha Rav Zvid Kunya will say, clay kunya is an interesting case. Clay kunya is an earthenware utensil that is covered by metal. So the Bible said there's an interesting shaila in the Sachas HaMavuzara when it comes to a clay kunya. How do we look at such a utensil? Do we look at it as a metallic utensil or as an earthenware utensil? I will say, who cares? It's a big difference. Why? Tumah will say, and even leos, absorptions. Remember, metallic utensils absorb but can be purged. Earthenware utensils absorb but cannot be purged. So Allah, what do you do with the kunya? So the Amr of Zidid, high money to kunya. These earthenware vessels coated with metal, if they're white metal or black metal, sharu. Ultimately, they're permitted. I will say, permitted means that Allah, we assume it's only the metallic part that absorbs, but the absorptions do not seep into the earthenware utensil. Yaroki, however, the greenish hue metal, asiri.
Yo, can you mute yourself, please?
Earthenware utensils, the earthenware part to absorb as well. And we'll say furthermore,
Mute yourself.
White and black, the only time we assume that the earthenware part of the utensil doesn't absorb all the metallic part does, that's only if there aren't cracks. About ispiri kartafuni asiri. But lamaisa all
mute yourself.
If there are cracks, then even the earthenware utensil is assumed to go ahead and
no, you don't hear me.
Well. Let's say a really incredible idea. I'll just point out.
It's very loud in the background. Mute yourself. Turn your microphone off, please.
And the truth is, for a variety of reasons, on the most basic level, right?
Okay?
Offer tashu, right? Earthenware comes from the earth. So to become from the earth, we go back to the earth. Very applicable to Persian relations. I will say also, earthenware is very easily breakable. So to man, unfortunately, can break himself very easily. The other piece about why we're compared to earthenware is that earthenware absorbs, and often you can't get out once it absorbs. Rabbi says sometimes in life we do things, we make decisions, and the things we do often can't be undone. It's an incredibly important idea. But you see something interesting, which is when earthenware is covered with metal, so ultimately it affords the earthenware a certain level of protection. Earthenware a certain level of shmira. Right, so the absorptions don't get it. They'll say, so what's the metal? The metal is Torah. The metal is Tefillah. The metal is Yochus. You take your plea and you surround it with a protective barrier. You put a mechitza around it. You protect it with your own avoda. And the absorptions still come in, but they don't go into the earthenware. They go into the metal. If they go into the metal, they're there, but they can be extracted, they can be undone. How important it is in life to make the protective mechitzas, to make the protective metal around our feet. That way, when we make bad decisions, which inevitably we will, and we have bad absorptions, which inevitably we will, we're not down and out. It's not stuck in there forever. It comes in, but again, if there's a proper mechitza, proper protective barrier, unfortunately, is the same way it came in, the rest of the extractor as well. Don't say, shkoyach, shkoyach. Good way to end the week. All right, Hebron Zoom. Everyone have a great day. Jerry, Dr. Osman, Hebron from Eretz Yisrael, have a great day. Alright, so it's like good morning, let us begin. Begin by thanking and all of our sponsors for this trip today, our portfolio sponsors. For the month of Tishrei, Dr. Linda Weinberg, Sharon, Grant, Julia, Luna, and everyone on your husband, father, and baby, Dr. Paul Weinberg. I have Moshe Ben Avraham David, Moshe Benson Bayal Steinberg, dedicating Shirin Tzvach to the specific of Shubanis Bas Isha, we have learning sponsors, Sarah Rubenstein, information at the outside top, her husband, Harvey, and Ben of Shmuel Moshe Zikron and the learning sponsor, Michael Jellison, information at the outside top, Jellison, and Rabbi Rothschild, and our daughters, Torah, Maria, and with that, let us begin. A lot to do today. Today's daf is quick signing 107. We are picking up on that on the base 186. We are picking up with noise 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Notice tonight. Let's remember again. We left off at kind of read through quickly the last couple of lines, the last rice of it. Remember again, we always had a very interesting discussion, which is, again, on the top line of Root 116, namely, what fund, which fund do our three shares of the remember the three shares to do plus methodology are certain currencies used to help the kafanos offered at on the Harvard Fair. Which fund do those, where does the money come from for those particular utensils? Is this a Baba Kabbali's issue? Is this ultimately come from what we call temple upkeep and repairs? Because since the Harvard is there as a solid structure, therefore anything associated with it ultimately again comes to Baba Kabbali's, or is it considered kabbalic in nature and therefore comes from Matzis Hashem? So we know just going down there tonight, it's not this tonight. This time, because we learned this time, Mosar and Mosar Truma, Mahali Osama, they say the leftover of the left Shaka. What would they do? Literally, what would they get? What would they do with the leftover of Shaka days? So we came out, see Kode's country of evidence. Usually, gold plating in the Kode's Shaka. It was a leftover money. What they would do is they would try to build the walls and the floor. So again, that wasn't a necessity, but if there was leftover money, that's what they would use it for. And Shmuel says, most are potatoes, the case of his death, most are criminal showers. Shmuel says, most are potatoes, leftover potatoes. Now, we don't know yet what that term is, so that's going to define it just a little bit. But the leftover from the potatoes, is the case of his death. This we see this remember the back in our Shmuel case. What's the case of his death? The idea was that in his death, she never be idle. So therefore, again, there was like a fund, a carbon fund, for some reason, shouldn't his death be idle, although it wasn't, it would be hard to imagine that his death in the base of this was ever idle. But again, if for some reason there was a lull in carbonic activity, they would have a fund from which to purchase additional funnels that should never be idle. So most of potatoes left over from the potatoes fund was that was like we'll see always the case was that mostly some of the cabalos. Most of truma left over naftas ashaka with three showers. So we'll say this is the opinion of the Shema. So the Shema holds that halach and myself, three showers, service utensils for the outer mizbeach comes from the leftover naftas ashaka. Okay, but here he disagrees. He says most of truma gives him that. Leftover naftas ashaka ultimately goes to the kids of Mizbeach, ultimately goes to this carbonic fund, something like carbonic fund. Most of the suffering left over in the suffering, as I said, this was actually yesterday back. I couldn't get a chance to do this fashion. Fashion tells that most of the suffering refers to money that the base of the person made as a result of locking in contracts for produce. So often they were able to lock in money, they were able to lock in contracts at lower prices. So therefore there was often surplus funds. Either that, or when the base Hamikdash purchased anything, like for example like flour. So merchants gave the base Hamikdash to like a premium. The premium was in the form that normally when you would buy flour, so the merchant levels off the utensil used for measuring. When the base Hamikdash bought, they would keep it. That extra amount, that they would be able to sell it. And those monies, those surplus monies, ultimately belong to the base Hamikdash. That's called Moser Nesachim. So leftover from the Nesachim is through showers. So you see that the Yeshiva holds that through showers doesn't come from Matzis HaShachar, right? Doesn't come from Shulchan Aruch, but rather again comes from this Moser Nesachim. Abikarinas Kalkonim, or Abikarinas Kalkonim says, Moser Nesachim, the teeth on his back, Moser Nesachim goes for the carbon fund. Moser Shuman, the three showers. And leftover Matzis HaShachar goes to three showers. He said, look, are you holding the parents? But neither agreed with parents. Okay, so they'll say, neither agreed about the parents. This one, by the way, Eros, what is this Eros? What are you talking about over here? The sign law, most search you now, how you see all they do is left up the Matzis Lokin was the guy who ordered like Matzis so Lokin, Eros resolve, who Lokin is some yoga. So they'll say, left over Matzis you buy, you actually buy it wholesale, right? And you sell it retail. Right? So in other words, so you would go ahead and you would purchase, and remember on the website, you have to understand, our complete business with the base of the fish, there's always an understanding that the base of the fish is always going to make you profit. In other words, anyone who contracts business with the base of the fish was never doing so for profit, they were always doing so for privilege. Interesting. Not profit, not for privilege. And therefore, pretty much, it's not these out on what these are going to go ahead and these are going to go ahead and well, we're going to take a loss. We're going to take a loss. But then again, that is part of the privilege of doing business with the base of the fish. So the returning right there means they would buy the discount and sell at a premium. Basar, that's $2 on the dollar. And ultimately, again, with the profits, that actually was used for keeps on the back, that was used for the supplemental balance fund. Very surprisingly, this is what we learned. Most are players that keeps on the back. Okay, so now Zach is how you measure the back. So what is it said? You are going to be regarding the players this time. Most are sharing the shkama how you are seeing the what we do with the leftover Matzis HaShachar. Most in behind Renos Shimon and the Southwest. They use the money to purchase wine, oil, and flour. Basar that have to sell it. And the profit would belong to the base of the Rabbi Shimon. And the Torah says, no, aim is not to the Shahak, we don't start doing business with consecrated funds. Up, no Bishal Aniyim. Interestingly enough, we also don't do business with tzedakah funds. Bishal Hakdish my time. We'll say, why is it ultimately again that we don't start going ahead and doing business with Hakdish funds? Aim Aniyim is the not Mashivas. Ultimately, again, because there is no poverty, ultimately, again, in a place of love. Right? It's like, so there has to be fast, there has to be fast. They're also not going to use extra strength for tzedakah, right? Because the nice because one is not going to use that something that is so consecrated for the Kaddish cause that we won't do. So we must be Shal Aniyim by Taina. Why don't we go ahead and do things with the money of Aniyim? Then on the side of the Hamla, the left of the storm. Let's say there's a surplus Aniyim funds. We're concerned that we don't need it. And if we go out and we try that business with it, and right now the money is unavailable, if there comes in money, there's prior to the funds. The money is unavailable, that could be problematic. Okay, as I said, you look at Rashi, Rashi went for that. As I said, bottom line, takeaway. Remember, we started with a very specific question, which is, where does the money for these showers come from? Right, that's our fundamental question. So how do we pass it? So as I said, Rambam Paskins, like Rabbi Akiva, right? Ultimately, again, telling us that Halacha L'maisa, these showers does not come from Matzis HaShachar. Instead, leftover matzahs a shekel was used to make cakes on his back. It was used for that supplemental carbonic time, which meant again the sugar of the alolim carbonic activity. He would go and purchase supplemental carbonos from that farm. Where did these sharis come from? Some most are Musafir. Ultimately, again, the Rambam passes like Rabbi Akiva, that the sharis came from those in the suffering, which again, according to Rashi, let's go into this first approach, that it comes from the money that is Hamikdash made in speaking measures. Right? I know when you work for the Beis Hamikdash, so they sold off the extra, and they were able to make money. That money was used to purchase the sharis. Incredible. Good. So I said that was like a total in the sense to this, but a fascinating activity one nevertheless. Inshallah, can give us it was like back to our regularly scheduled programs. Remember again, the Mishnah brought up the case of a woman whose husband went overseas. And the problem was he left without leaving her Mizorah, or at least she claims he left without leaving her Mizorah. Now the shaila is, what happens? Does David start selling off his property in order to go ahead and sustain his life? So here we go. If not, we'll say fundamental focus. Rav Amalav says half of Kotzayin post Mizorah's the Isha. So Rav says if woman shows up in days and she says, I'm going overseas, and he left me over Zonos, Allah for the Maisa, David starts selling off his property in order to sustain his life. This is actually not actually Kotzayin Aleph, 107a. David learned in the same Shayach Rizasayam. Those people don't say don't. But I just have for myself. Maybe shows up and says it. Says my husband doesn't leave you anything. Jason begins to sell off property in order to sustain the life. Shmuel says, ain't posting his own estate. Shmuel says, right, we don't do this. We don't do this. Sarah Shmuel, so let's see where we go. Shmuel says, Mogili Abba, is the Abba the Rav. Shmuel says, Rav will agree with me. Shmuel should come back to Rav agrees with me in the first 3 months that the husband left town. That was in the first 3 months the husband left town. Allah for myself, even Rav agrees that based on this Salah property. Why not? The two shepherds of the Shmaria, they say. I will say this is an interesting idea. Because we assume like people always have to like always have to the idea being that a person doesn't leave yes, in other words, so what Shmuel is saying is even Rav knows that when we say that they need to sell off property in order to sustain the woman, that's the husband's away from attractive amount of time. But within the first 3 months of his protection from the home, the assumption is there's food in the home, there's money, there's some money to be spent, there's not an urgency immediately. Right. So therefore, that's great. So therefore, so here's what we have. We have Mahlokas Rav and Shmuel. Right? Does Jason get if woman shows up, says my husband went overseas? Does Jason get involved in selling off property to sustain the life? Rav, yes. Shmuel, no. But Shmuel says Rav agrees that his yes is only after 3 months, but not within the first 3 months. Okay. So here we go. Bishop Shemel Bo Shemel to Amalek Vizi. So we'll say when we get that person die, everyone agrees that what? Everyone agrees that Jason will get involved and sell off property. Look at Rashi. That's very interesting because Rashi chose the same defense over here. This is Shemel Shemes to the Amalek Vizi. So right when we get that the husband dies, everyone agrees that Jason will get involved and sell off property. Rashi says the posting. But Jason will get involved and sell off property. Why? Rabbi said, let's take a step back for just a moment. Why? What's Shmuel's issue? Right? Why does Shmuel say Basin doesn't get involved? It actually sounds pretty intuitive that Basin should get involved. Why wouldn't Basin get involved? So it's actually very interesting. So the mind makes the shot. In general, Shmuel is concerned with the possibility of two things. Either it's slurry, or self-only close to Subas, but the Shabbat Shalom Shalom. Let's say one possibility is like this. Maybe you inform that the husband left his wife a bag of money. Right? Sarah asked herself, maybe he left her money. In other words, so he's overseas. Right? He's going overseas. He leaves a bag of money. He says, I'm going to be gone for a while. Here's what you need to support yourself. Meanwhile, she's going to show up in basement. She's going to finish everything in his own. He's not here to contradict the claim. No one knows about the money. No one knows about the money. So therefore, I was like, if ultimately again, I'm sorry, let me add one more piece. Furthermore, the second possibility is that maybe before he left, he said to her, you know what? You're married to Rachel, he's going overseas, Rachel, you have a good job, You know what? Don't keep your earnings to me. You keep your earnings and you support yourself. So let's just spend off just a moment. The reason why Shmuel says Jason doesn't get involved is because Shmuel is concerned with one of those two possibilities. Maybe before he left Eva, he went out and said, here's about the money. Right? Or he said to her, keep your earnings. And she shows up in saying, I have no results. Meanwhile, you have no way of verifying what's happening. That's what Shmuel says in general. I love for myself, we're not going to go ahead and get involved in results. However, when we hear that he died, then we can get involved in results. Why? Now look at that Rashi again. So the mind nation is what should we be concerned about? If we're concerned that maybe once he left her bag of money, that's not a problem, right? Because let's say anyway later on, if he's dead, if he's going to collect her shua, she's going to have to swear that she didn't keep her. So the shua will take care of that. Okay. And if we're concerned, let's see, not sure that he's going to say. And if we're concerned that he said to her, keep your earnings, the Kibla Allah Mishameis, Amen Shibada, so not there that. If he's dead, he doesn't have to do the things for earnings anyway. Right? So the Mesa, again, Shmuel comes along and says that in a situation where we heard that, Shmuel says, in a situation where we heard that died, under those circumstances, Allah and Mesa, everyone agrees that the Basin can get involved and provide her with results. So where does the focus come up? So ultimately, again, we didn't hear that he died. Rav Amar Poskin. So let's say, so now, let's take a step back. Right? So now, the way we started, the progression was, Reuben is married to Rachel. Reuben goes overseas. Rachel comes to Beis and says, has no mazonos. So what do? Machlokas. God says, Beis sells off property in order to give him mazonos. Shmuel says, we don't get involved. So first qualification, Shmuel says, hold on. Even Rav agrees that Beis doesn't get involved when? First 3 months. Why? A person doesn't leave his home justice. Good. Now the Gemara says, by the way, further qualification is, if we're talking about a case where Reuben went overseas, and now what? We heard that Reuben died. Everyone agrees that's right. And of course, I'm sorry, let's take a step back. And why does Shmuel hold that Basin doesn't get involved? Why does the other Basin doesn't get involved? Shmuel says we can start one of two possibilities. Either A, he left her bag of money, or B, he said, husband said to keep your earnings. Keep your earnings. And because we don't know, therefore we can't start selling off his property. Okay. Further qualification. We're talking about over here, the focus on Shmuel is when we didn't hear that he's dead. We just heard that he's overseas. But if you heard that he's dead, in that case, then what? Everyone agrees Jason sells off property from the reserves. Because in that case, we have no concerns. Shmuel has no concerns. We don't have to be concerned about they left a bag of money. Why? Because if that did occur, she's going to have to swear about that anyway when she collects her ksuba. And if it was a case where he said to keep your earnings, but once he's dead, he's no longer entitled to earnings. Beautiful. So let's say so watch this. Therefore, if we know that he's dead, if we know it's still not focused, it's only when what? Reuben's overseas and we have not heard that he's dead. Rav Amar Poskin, the Hamashivah. Therefore, Rav says, now Reuben goes overseas. Now we know that he's overseas. Rachel shows up and says, I have no mazonos. Rav says, sell off his property. Why? The Hamashivah. Because he's obligated to a lot of his mazonos. Shmuel says, in Poskin, no, we don't start selling off property. My time.